So the title of this video, as you can see, he doesn't lack love. He lacks integrity and moral accountability. So we're going to talk about men who lack integrity and moral accountability. So have you ever wondered why some men just can't get things right? Even when they know the right thing to do, they still don't do it. Why do they keep avoiding responsibility? Why do they keep breaking promises? Why do they keep hurting women that trust them? Right? So today we are diving into the real reasons why men lack integrity. Some men lack integrity and moral accountability, and why is just not bad behavior. So this video is not about hating men. It's about naming patterns or behaviors that hurt women and calling out the lack of personal integrity we see in so many men today. Right? So we are going to talk about something many women experience but are often gaslit and dismissed when they call these men out on bad behavior. So when you say integrity mean, you do what's right even though it's hard, or you do what's right even though nobody is watching, right? And moral accountability is the ability to recognize when your actions affect others. You take ownership of your behavior and then you correct it. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it may inconvenience you, you do the right thing and you correct it. So basically, it's doing the right thing and taking full responsibility when you don't do the right thing. So let's be honest here. Some men act like the world revolves around them, especially in romantic relationships. I find it very interesting that a lot of women, including myself, keep running into men who lack personal integrity and self-respect and basic courtesy, and not necessarily only in romantic relationship, but just in general while you're out in society. We can see that a lot of men lack everyday respect and just good manners towards others. So some men, they don't take other people's emotions, thoughts, and concerns seriously. Specifically, the feelings of women. They don't take women emotions seriously. They don't take their concerns or issues as important compared to their emotions or issues that they got going on. So many men see women as inferior, and with that, there's no urgency when it comes to putting effort into doing the right thing and being accountable, because they see women as inferior to them. So there are certain behaviors that you would see men doing when they lack personal integrity. Just being honest, being consistent, having values, no matter the situation, right? So we see many men, a lot of men, mostly in romantic relationship, they lie easily. They lie without remorse, they lie without guilt, they lie without shame. These are behaviors you will see when men lack personal integrity. They break promises without feeling shame, without feeling guilty. They don't follow through with their plans. They don't do what they say they're going to do, right? Next thing is they cancel last minute and they have no internal conflict. Like, there's a lack of respect for women's time. So whatever the man is doing or have going on, when he's late, it's like it doesn't matter, right? There's also a lack of emotional responsibility, not taking ownership of their own feelings, their reactions, not taking ownership of the impact they have on others, like avoiding accountability for hurtful words, avoiding accountability for their actions. They overreact, they refuse to apologize, they minimize the feelings of their partner, right? And that is a lack of emotional responsibility. There's a lack of courtesy, there's a lack of basic manners, there's a lack of politeness in general. And yes, I'm talking about romantic relationships here, but in general, I see this in society with a lot of men. They act entitled to access to their partner's body. They always expect forgiveness. They expect to be understood no matter what, right? And then they disappear without considering the emotional impact that they are causing and they just prioritize their convenience and their comfort over caring about the relationship, or over they care about their comfort instead of caring or showing any concern. So basically they avoid accountability. So that is what you see when a man lacks personal integrity, right? And what integrity actually would look like in a relationship is doing the right thing no matter if it's uncomfortable. Doing what you said you would do, even when it's inconvenient. Caring about your word, caring about your actions. You care that your actions match your word. I don't understand how you could be a man. You say something and you don't follow through, and you don't care how you look. That is what I'm seeing going on in romantic relationship and in society. Right? When you have integrity, you don't switch up based on the situation. You're the same person for weeks, for months, for years. For example, maybe he made a mistake and he is apologetic. He apologized, he is kind and caring. And once you stay or take them back, they go back to the same behavior. So that's like an example of switching up. Like you just meet them, they start off loyal, start off respectful, start off understanding, but after a few months you start to see they're making excuses for their behavior. They start to become mean, they start to switch up, and that's a lack of integrity, right? And integrity in a romantic relationship looks like you feel internal conflict when you hurt someone. You feel guilty when you say you're going to do something and you don't do it. You feel shame when you make plans and you don't follow through. You have some internal conflict when you hurt someone, right? You hold yourself accountable without being forced by your partner to apologize, to change behavior, to do the right thing. So instead of having personal integrity, what I see many men doing is they're just charming instead of working on their character. They're just making excuses to avoid responsibility, to avoid accountability, or they go silent, they ghost, they shut down, they disappear just to avoid being honest, to avoid having hard conversations, to avoid apologizing. And doing all of these things create confusion, and it creates emotional stress for the woman, for the romantic partner. So it makes the relationship feel unstable. And when a man lacks integrity, love become chaotic, and you can't build a healthy romantic relationship with somebody who have a broken character, right? So the next thing is the lack of moral accountability. So what having moral accountability look like in a relationship is when you apologize when you hurt someone. Instead of making excuses, you apologize when you hurt someone. You apologize and you actually change your behavior. You don't apologize today and then tomorrow you continue with the same bad behavior, right? Having moral accountability looks like being honest, even when it's uncomfortable, doing the right thing when nobody is watching, admitting when you're wrong and not shifting the blame to your partner. It's not cheating. Even when there's opportunity to cheat, you don't cheat, you don't lie, you're honest about your intentions, you don't lead people on and then you switch up. You don't gaslight someone when they express how they feel. You don't minimize their feelings. Basically, it's taking responsibility for your behavior according to your values and your ethic. So men, they have no values at all. So moral accountability is just doing right by people and owning your actions, even when it costs you. It's when you own what you do, you admit when you're wrong, you take responsibility for the impact you have on others. So it's owning your mistakes without excuses. It's not lying to make yourself look better. It's taking responsibility for your growth. You have to change your behavior. You take responsibility for you doing better instead of blaming your past or creating excuses, right? So moral accountability, what moral accountability actually look like is saying I was wrong without making an excuse. You don't say, I did it because you did that. You admit you're wrong, right? You don't shift the blame to your partner. Oh, it's because of my past and it's because of this circumstance why I did it. You take full responsibility for your actions, for your words, for your behavior. You change your behavior. You don't repeat the same harmful behavior, actions. You go and work on yourself as a man, and you heal after conflict. You resolve conflict, right? You show that you have grown, that you have learned, and you don't just apologize, but you actually change your behavior. So men should communicate honestly. Having moral accountability means you should tell the truth even when it's uncomfortable. You don't lie, you don't hide things, you don't mislead your partner. Men should be clear about their intentions, right? Men should respect women feelings. Listen instead of getting defensive. Men should learn how to listen. They should learn how to resolve conflict instead of giving attitude and creating arguments. They should learn how to actually listen and resolve conflict, right? I see a lot of men, like, they dismiss or they minimize the feelings of women, right? And they don't try to understand the perspective of their partner. They don't actively listen. Most of them, they're not even genuinely concerned about the issue or what is going on with their partner, right? And another thing I see going on is a lot of men don't reflect on themselves. Men need to stop and think about how their actions are affecting their partner that they're with. Men don't reflect on their past. Men need to be willing to self-correct without being forced to change behavior, without being forced to apologize, without being forced to grow and be better. Men need to stop acting like they are always right, and their words need to match their actions, and they need to be the same person over time and not change up and switch up. So what's annoying and what moral accountability is not apologizing and repeat the same mistake. It's not gaslighting or flipping the blame on your partner to escape the consequences, right? It's not when you just be accountable just because you got caught. Basically, moral accountability is about consistent self-awareness, taking responsibility for your actions and choosing the relationship over your ego. So there are reasons why a lot of men lack personal integrity and moral accountability in general. And one of the reasons why is because they have underdeveloped inner values. Some men were raised without facing consequences for their actions, and they also relied on external validation throughout their lives, and they always do what is convenient to them while they were growing up. While they were growing up, they probably did not have guidance or anybody teaching them values. So their values, their morals, it's underdeveloped. What they would mostly ask to themselves is, how can I get away with this? Instead of thinking about what is the right thing to do, they think about, how can I get away, right? Instead of thinking, did I hurt her feelings? Or was I wrong for doing that? Or was I insensitive? They don't reflect, they don't think about these things. They don't think. Some men are cold, they are heartless, they are self-centered. There's a lot of self-centered men, right? And that is another problem. They don't ask themselves, why is she complaining all the time? Why is she keep explaining this to me? These men haven't fully formed or prioritized core principles in their life, like honesty, responsibility, respect, and empathy. throughout their lives. These men have no moral compass within themselves. They don't know what is right. They might know what is right and then still choose to do wrong. They often make decisions based on from a self-centered place, right? They have not developed enough values. So that's one reason why you see men lack integrity. They lack moral accountability. Second reason why men lack personal integrity and moral accountability is because they are emotionally immature. Which to me is the root cause of most problems in romantic relationship, because with my own experience and studying romantic relationships and behavior of men mostly, I keep seeing the same thing showing up with a lack of they are emotionally immature, which seem to be the root cause of everything. So integrity requires self-reflection. If you're gonna do the right thing, you have to look at your actions, your words. So it requires self-reflection. It requires accountability. And it requires you to tolerate discomfort, to feel shame, to feel guilty, to feel like I might be an irresponsible person, And this is what happens when you're emotionally immature. Many men have been taught to just avoid their emotions and they didn't process them. So rather than feel bad and change behavior and grow and be better, they detach, they rationalize behavior, they put their comfort first. Always, they put themselves first, they are self-centered. These men have not developed the ability to understand people's emotions, to manage their emotions, to express emotions in a healthy and responsible way. Right? Many men react emotionally to problems. Like a boy, unfortunately. Not a grown man. So behaving like a boy would look like avoiding responsibility, shutting down when there's issues, acting impulsively instead of handling things in a mature way. So they lack they are emotionally immature. So when you're emotionally immature, you lash out. Basically, you get angry, you get aggressive fast. You argue back and forth. Men I see giving attitude and just being dysfunctional and chaotic. And it just looks so feminine when men go back and forth with a woman, when they give attitude and create problem and be chaotic, right? Acting like a boy and like being emotionally immature, you would see men giving silent treatment, withdrawing, instead of listening, getting defensive, and just also avoiding difficult conversations, right? You cannot build a healthy relationship with someone who they have not matured emotionally. So it would always be chaotic and you will always be going back and forth, right? So the third reason why most men lack integrity, moral accountability, is because of entitlement conditioning. Most men grow up believing that their needs come first, always, and other people's needs and concerns, especially women or their romantic partner, their needs are not as important. Most men believe their romantic partner should always understand and adapt to what is going on in their life. They think that whatever is going on in her life is less important and that she's inferior to him. They wouldn't say that out loud, but you could see this from their actions, right? When they feel entitled having respect and having integrity would feel unnecessary. Having integrity wouldn't be important because they don't see other people, especially a romantic partner, as fully equal in emotional weight. He has been taught, directly or indirectly, that he deserves a certain treatment, that he deserves respect or benefits without earning them, without even showing loyalty or respect. He believes that you, as a woman, you're with him, that you owe him love, you owe him loyalty, you owe him your body, you owe him respect and forgiveness, just for who he is, not for how he behaves, not for how he treats you. So he could act careless and fumble you around and still expect love and loyalty. That is entitlement. I see that going on a lot. And this comes from being overly excused for bad behavior. When they were growing up, they probably were never held accountable for their actions by their parents, obviously. And with that, society also tell men that they should be prioritized. So then they expect respect without giving it. Men think that they deserve loyalty while being inconsistent. They get upset, and when they are held accountable, they feel offended. And when you set boundaries, then they start to like disappear, use silent treatment, and do all of these things. Right? They may say things like, you should understand me, but they don't understand you. This is entitlement behavior. They expect you to stay with them even if they're doing you wrong, right? He acts like you are too much, you're too hard to handle, and he will give the bare minimum but expect maximum loyalty, love, and understanding and respect. So all of that is just entitlement, growing up, not being held accountable when they did wrong, and then having society give this idea that men should be prioritized, right? So entitlement conditioning creates men who expect everything, but they take responsibility for nothing, right? So the fourth reason why most men lack integrity, personal integrity, and moral accountability is because avoidance of self-awareness, which I mentioned before. They avoid looking inwards. Men do not reflect. They do not confront their flaws. They do not think about their weaknesses. They do not work on their weaknesses, do not work on their character, they do not work on themselves. They find it easier to lie, to cheat, to ghost, to be inconsistent, to be unreliable. Some men are unreliable and they're not shame and they don't feel guilty. It's crazy. I don't know how men walk around and just, people know that they're unreliable. People know that he doesn't keep his word. You can't rely on him. He breaks his promises, and they just don't face themselves. They don't look inward. And integrity requires courage. But avoidance and, not taking accountability feels safe and easy to them, right? So they avoid self-awareness. They have a lack of concern. Some of them look heartless and cold, and being heartless and cold is much easier than looking at your flaws and looking at your weaknesses and working on yourself. So instead of looking inwards and becoming a better man and working on your character to develop integrity and moral accountability, what they do is just avoid hard conversations, sweep things under the rug, disappear, shut down like a boy, and they shift the blame to their partner because that's easy and self-awareness is hard, and they don't want to look at who they really are, right? Most men, they don't reflect on their behavior, they don't reflect on their emotions, they don't look at the impact they have on people. So they just keep repeating the same pattern and they stay stagnant and they don't grow. And a man who lacks self-awareness will always see his partner as the problem, right? He will always choose his comfort and his convenience instead of growing. These men, they will stay stagnant or they will get worse. They never improve themselves. So he will always think he's right. When you lack self-awareness, you always think you're right. You blame others for everything. You get defensive, especially when you confront them. When a man is confronted, he get defensive, refuse to even have self-respect, right? He doesn't see how his actions hurt his partner, and he just repeat the same mistake. So you keep going in circles. You will never see real growth. You will never see a man who lacks self-awareness change. You would always feel unheard and misunderstood. He would invalidate your experiences, and you would just end up as a woman doing all the emotional work in the romantic relationship. So if he can't reflect on himself, he will never change. He refused to look within, he will never grow, he will never improve himself, and the relationship would always be chaotic, right? Another reason why men lack integrity, they lack moral accountability, most men today, is because they lack internal self-respect. They don't respect themselves. They don't care. I can't imagine myself being a man and I don't have self-respect. I'm unreliable, I'm disrespectful, I'm irresponsible, and other people know this, and I don't feel shame and I don't feel guilty, right? This obviously shows that they don't respect themselves. If someone truly value themselves, they care about their word. They care that their word match their actions. Their actions match their word. Yeah, they care that their actions match their word. Right? Men today, most men, a lot of men, they lack basic manners, morals, and respect. They doesn't truly value themselves on the inside. And a lot of them appear confident on the outside, but they're not. Right? He doesn't have a strong sense of worth, doesn't have standards, they don't have discipline, so their actions don't reflect, respect. So you would see that they don't respect themselves, you would see that they don't respect others because they have no standards. So that's how he would break promises easy. That's how he would disrespect others, because he lacks self-respect. These men who lack self-respect, they can't lead in a relationship, or they can't show up consistently. And they would always seek men who lack self-respect. Most of them seek attention from multiple women, and they don't value what they have. They don't value the woman that they have. And men who lack self-respect are always struggling with loyalty, honesty, and being disciplined. A man who doesn't respect himself cannot respect his partner. Sorry. So the sixth reason why men lack integrity, they lack moral accountability, is because of society. Social reinforcement. Society excuses their behavior with phrases like, you hear it in the media, well, that's just how men are. Or you hear people say, well, he didn't mean it like that. Or, well, men are not emotional. Men don't communicate as often as women. And they just get away scot-free from facing the consequences. So when you hear society reinforcing that, they will not develop integrity. Society rewards, normalizes, and just excuse bad behavior of men. So it's gonna keep happening. Most men are not going to develop integrity. So they just repeat harmful behavior towards women because they are not held accountable, and sometimes their bad behavior is even supported by the media, right? So you would hear women being told to do, be patient and try to understand him, and that's just how men are, or boys would always be boys, which never makes sense to me ever. Growing up hearing that, it always seemed weird and confusing. Boys will always be boys. I don't understand what that means, but it's just trying to normalize bad behavior of men. Or he didn't mean it like that. So it's just like indirectly telling women to just accept disloyalty, accept disrespect, be devalued, and just be taken for granted, because boys will always be boys, right? So even his friends would be laughing off cheating, right? Not calling it out. Cheating is like not bad around his friends. Bad behavior is also normalized in music, in social media, in the culture where you live. So then men expect forgiveness because they expect being forgiven, because they're always forgiven. They don't feel any pressure to change because society is normalizing their behavior, and then they believe that their behavior is normal, right? So men wouldn't change because society never required them to change, and their bad behavior is becoming normal now, and the system is just enabling them and normalizing their behavior. So that is why men would always stay stagnant, and it would get worse. The lack of integrity and the lack of moral accountability, it will get worse. And I'm not only talking about romantic relationship, but just in society in general, right? Men are getting worse in general when it comes to their character, especially integrity. So another reason why men lack integrity is because they fear intimacy and they avoid responsibility. Basically, they're emotionally lazy. I talked about emotional laziness already. Integrity requires you to look at your actions. So that means you need to follow through on what you say you're going to do, right? You need to be present emotionally. You need to be dependable. Integrity means you're dependable, you're responsible, you keep your promises, you're consistent, you show up as the same person for weeks, for months, for years. But instead, they choose to be avoidant. They choose to be distant. They choose to disappear until it becomes their character to lack integrity, to lack self-respect and moral accountability. Some men, they avoid emotional closeness and responsibility because it makes them feel vulnerable. It makes them feel exposed. They avoid intimacy because you're going to see who they really are, right? You're going to see that they're unreliable, right? Men, they have, and women, but talking about men here, they have past trauma and negative experiences that obviously they have not resolved, because most men do not reflect on their past. They do not reflect on their bad behavior. They don't reflect on the decisions that they made, right? They do not reflect on the experiences that they had and see where they went wrong and correct their behavior. They're not doing that, right? And with that and the emotional immaturity, it would equal to dysfunction and chaos in your romantic relationship. They are avoiding the pressure of commitment and responsibility because they don't have the tools to navigate a serious relationship. You're emotionally immature, you fear intimacy, you fear having a hard conversation, you avoid resolving conflict. You need skills to have a serious relationship, and they don't have the tools to be like a real man and resolve conflict and grow and be better. So what happens? They just pull away when things get serious. They avoid difficult conversation. They keep things surface level. They in and out. They hot and cold, and they don't define the relationship, and they disappear when there's accountability. Well, they disappear when accountability is required. So they lack integrity because they fear intimacy. They fear responsibility. They fear what it needs, what they really need to be. They fear who they really need to be to have a serious relationship, right? And that is integrity and moral accountability. The men who I'm talking about here in this video, most of them are self-centered. So they believe the world revolves around them. Their comfort, the world revolves around their comfort, their desires, their stress always come first, especially when they're in a romantic relationship. Their partner concerns and their issues always is like secondary data, right? Men who lack integrity and who lack moral accountability, they're always thinking about themselves first. And then they might think about their family, and then they think about their boss, and then they might think about their friends and everyone else, and then after that they might think about their romantic partner. So their romantic partner feelings, emotions, concerns, issues are like optional. It's not an obligation, because they put themselves first, and then they might put their family, and then their boss, and then their friends. Some men even put their friends before their romantic partner, right? And also, men who lack integrity and personal integrity, and they lack accountability, most of them, they lack empathy, right? They don't feel responsible for the impact they have. They don't feel responsible for the impact of their actions and their words. So they believe they could act anyway, they could act anyhow, and they could say anything, and women should just adjust and understand. And they wouldn't adjust their behavior afterwards or do anything, because they lack empathy, right? So what they do, they be dismissive, they minimize feelings, they act indifferent. That's easier for them. But this is how, but they believe that women are inferior to them, and that women emotions and feelings and concern are not as important compared to what they have going on in their lives, and they always put their comfort first. These men, they lack humility, they lack emotional maturity, and they don't have inner values, right? So what to do when you encounter these type of men? Well, if you're a woman watching this, you should just stop explaining yourself, right? Repeating yourself over and over will teach him that you will tolerate his behavior. When you're waiting for change behavior, you're repeating yourself over and over, you're explaining, you're having patience or whatever. It is just teaching him that you're going to just tolerate whatever he does, right? And the next thing you should do is just believe the patterns you are seeing, not the apologies, because most of them, they apologize and they do the same behavior the next day. They may not even feel guilty, they may not even feel remorse, right? Apology without change behavior is just useless, right? My battery is dying. I have to continue this video in another take.